it's Drybear. We finished our 4 focused weapon, unique weapon build for Hailey the Snowpiercer, and this is her best build overall. It focuses on using her unique weapon to its fullest with lots of damage. But before we moved on from Hailey, I wanted to do at least one more build. I thought there was going to be multiple for her, but she really only has 2 primary builds to focus on, and today is going to be the second build, Hailstorm. So this is the other build for Hailey, and the work on this one was I wanted to make a build around her shoulder turret, her first ability, which is super fun and actually quite spammable. It scales off of dimension and modifier a lot more than her other abilities and gives her a lot more flexible playstyle. It's almost like a weapon-based mobbing Viessa build, which is super cool and super fun. So this is the way I would set up the Hailstorm Hailey that focuses on using her shoulder turret. And by the way, if we get any Transcendent mods for her that make her shoulder turret a lot stronger, a lot more interesting, this build is going to be incredibly strong. Right now, it's a pretty well-balanced mobbing build. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's going to clear faster than a bunny, but it certainly is respectable and does bring in your weapons in, because one of my favorite parts about the shoulder turret, the first ability for Hailey, is that you can use it while you're firing or reloading your weapon. There is no interaction between the two. You can constantly be activating the shoulder turret and doing whatever you want with your weapon. They don't block each other, which is really fun. So with this build, we're doing 4 out of 4 Polar Knight, and there's a couple of combinations that we're going to run with this. So the synergies between all of these is going to be as follows. We're going to use Polar Knight 4 out of 4, which is your late game set bonus. This will give you chill skill power, and also will make it so that when you trigger Frostbite, which you can easily trigger with your weapon, with your abilities, and any combination of the two, it will stack up firearm crit hit damage and skill crit hit damage, which is huge. Additionally, when you defeat an enemy that has Frostbite, they have a chance to explode for their maximum HP, doing frost to everyone around you. So you're basically spamming the combination of the Clairvoyance with the chill enhancement mod on it, and Hailey's shoulder turret to spam frost everywhere, triggering Frostbites, giving you skill crit damage and firearm crit damage, which gives you a nice basic build where you can just run around using your weapon and shooting at things with your shoulder turret. We also run Lethal Infection. What this does is that when you crit an enemy that has a debuff, it will give you skill power modifier stacking up to 10 times, so 2.5 times for that. You could also run Decimator as a secondary option for this. However, it is much slower to stack because it does require you to defeat an enemy, so it depends on the encounter. I found that Lethal Infection is more consistent for this build, just in case you're doing content where there's not always enemies available to clear. Decimator is a huge pickup for things like Valby Farm, where you're constantly and consistently having a steady flow of mobs, but if those mobs disappear for 10 seconds and you lose all your stacks, it stacks up a lot slower, and I found that you can get Lethal Infection stacked up almost instantly with this build by using Clairvoyance and the Frost attack from her one ability. Now, your Clairvoyance will also add additional chill resistance reduction on the target, which is great for your Q ability. We're going to want at least 74% skill cooldown, so that as soon as our Q is done, or 1 is done, it will immediately reset its cooldown. So basically all you're doing is you're using your weapon normally, running around as a normal weapon user, but you're constantly hitting your first ability, so that it's always shooting out additional frost damage, stacking Frostbite, stacking Polar Knight, and also doing critical hits, which stacks up your Lethal Infection. Now, the way I have this built is that it doesn't rely on holding down your third ability. I tried that a bunch where you have the third ability up, and I ran a ton of skill cost reduction and maximum MP. It got to the point though where we were spending so much of our available resources for the build, reducing our mana cost, that we ended up losing too much damage and crit. So we ended up just not having enough output for that. So I decided that it would be better to just turn off the 3, use it for bosses or some situations, and focus more on dealing damage output and skill crit scaling to keep this scaled up. And then all you're doing is you're hitting your first ability. What's cool about this is you can get a whole bunch of stacks of your cryo passive very easily. Then you get a whole bunch of stacks of Lethal Infection, and you can stack up your overall Polar Knight. And when you have all those buffs stacked up and debuffs on the target, then you can press your second ability for a big burst on a single target or a big clump of enemies that are together, which is really easy to build up. So you're playing with this very high octane, high input build up all of your buff stacks. Once you have max stacks, blast them with your second ability, and then go back to using your weapon. It's a very straightforward build. Now, because we're not running with too many mana mods in this build and it's focused more on just clearing out mobs, you will really want to maximize the amount of MP return that you get from your external components. We're running 4 out of 4 Polar Knight, but you notice that the best in slot here is going to be for the sensor, max MP and MP recovery in combat, and then also for the memory, we want MP recovery modifier. This will allow us to absorb more mana when we're dealing with this, and also you can swap in things like MP collector to help you to maintain your mana levels so you can keep spamming your first ability, though with a little bit of cooldown, skill cooldown, and a little bit of MP recovery and max MP, you can maintain your mana almost all the time just based on drops from enemies. But if you find that you're running into mana problems, then you definitely want to swap in something like MP collector that'll allow you to get a little bit more mana as you're running around and mobbing. And then we can also run the Quick Freezer mod on Clairvoyance. What's awesome about Quick Freezer in this specific case is that you're not really relying on the Clairvoyance damage output by itself. But what I love about Quick Freezer is that when you defeat an enemy that has Frostbite, it inflicts Frostbite on all targets within range of that enemy, which means that you will instantly stack up all of the stacks that you need for Polar Knight. So when you get this to trigger every 20 seconds, boom, it gives you full stacks of a Polar Knight, which gives you a massive 60% skill crit damage and 17% firearm crit damage. Huge damage increase, and it stacks up. And you also consume stacks of cryo to get more damage. You basically have like constant amount of buff stacks on you, debuff stacks on the target, and the amount of stacks you're getting all over the screen is actually wild. Now, I built this as a mobbing build, but it actually turned out to be an amazing single target burner as well, especially once you get your maxed out Clairvoyance. I don't have a well-built Clairvoyance in this footage, and I don't have a fully maxed out reactor or the right components for this as well. So you can end up making this a lot more optimized than it is right now, and you end up getting a lot of single target burn with constant ticking damage, which I think is a nice change of pace from the Lepics and the Snowpiercer Haileys that we've been dealing with, where you just go in and you blow something to bits. I also love this build for using like your second ability there. Whenever the orbs appear for immunity phases, you can blast them all in one go and then just go right back to uptime burn DPS. But you can see how many DPS, like debuff markers and stack markers we're getting on this just by burning through and running around, and it's just very flexible and easy to play. And if you wanted to, this isn't really something that needs Clairvoyance. There's a lot of synergy with Clairvoyance because you can trigger like Frostbite stacks. You can also add the chill resistance down on the target. But if you wanted to just use whatever weapons you had, like you could use any of the best weapons in the game, and because your shoulder mounted turret fires while you're using your weapon, it synergizes with any weapon build that you want to use. I'm just recommending Clairvoyance for this specifically because you get a lot of value out of that. And that's overall the Hailstorm Hailey build. I think this one is going to be more Transcendent module dependent than the Snowpiercer Burst Sniper build that we have right now, but I think it's a very well-rounded build that you can use for mobbing and other things like that, going around and burning through dungeons or just farming XP on your Hailey, and you can use it as a backup build as well to swap to when you feel like you're just going to be doing missions over and over instead of trying to lock yourself in place and do big burst damage with the sniper rifle if you want to stay on Hailey for all kinds of content that isn't just dealing burst damage to bosses. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.